people often talk about how mental illness is a taboo in the West, but it's even more of a taboo in Indian societies. I mean, there's a fraction of the psychiatrists in India that there are in America or in the UK. If you generally have a severe mental illness in an Indian community, you're generally left alone to deal with it by yourself. And there's also a lot of superstition surrounding it. And when people get ill, and they are often blamed, or their relatives are blamed for the mental illness. And so I guess my story plugs into all of that. And I guess the thing I'm proudest of is that the book has opened up conversations around schizophrenia, which is one of the least understood and most stigmatized diseases around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Sathnam. Lynsey or Sacha, do you want to go?
Well, I guess for me, it just highlights the need for support for mental health. And that seems to be, I mean, I can only speak for the UK, but it's always one of the first things to be cut, you know. So I think that was a big part of Sathnam's parents' family, was trying to find the support that they needed. And sadly, that still is relevant today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you see things changing in terms of your work, Lynsey?
I think right. I think what Sathnam was saying as well. It's I think this news came out yesterday. It's important that we don't speculate, but just talking about mental health right now, and for me, is that there isn't enough people talking about it, and it's sad that some people who are experiencing mental health have to sit in it on their own. And if we're looking at the South Asian community particularly, there just isn't enough people talking about it. And hopefully through the work we do in the creative industry, we can help create more of an awareness. I mean, during lockdown right now, it's been the perfect time for me to create some of my own work. And one of the things that I did was to work with another South Asian writer called Nikesh Shukla to collaborate on the piece, to talk about more, or particularly young Asian men, to talk more about mental health. And I'll continue doing that. I've realized just how important it is, if not more important than the work that I'm doing in terms of, you know, auditioning and stuff like that. This seems to be more important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really hope that the industry begins to pay a lot more attention to this topic. I would like to play some message right now, if I may. So just bear with me, get my volume up here. And
morning to all of you. I was supposed to be at the end of Q&A after the film The Boy with the Top Knot, along with the director Lynsey and other people. I think Sathnam was also there, and Nisha was also there. But unfortunately, very sadly, that a very dear friend of mine, Sushant Singh Rajput, committed suicide today. And I'm in no mood and no position to participate in this conversation. You will have to excuse me. But today's death of the actor again highlights the fact that how mental illness can cause so much damage, not only to the person who has taken his life, but also to the people around him. So in that sense, Boy with the Top Knot is a very, very important film of our times. I remember when I was shooting for this film, I was going through depression myself. And we needed to I used depression to portray the character. But all of you over there, please spread love. Identify people who you find are getting reclusive, not talking, reach out to people, reach out to individuals, take them out of this thing. Don't think that he or she is moody, or she does not want to talk, or he's a loner. Especially today's generation is so much devoid of human interchange, that it's very important. This film will serve its purpose. You all become aware of this illness. This is bigger than any physical disease that we have, because diseases are visible, other diseases you can find, and that you have this problem. But in this mental problem, you don't even know what the other person is going through. So again, I'm sorry I'm not there, but please, I hope you like the film. I'm sure it's a beautiful film, and I love being part of it. And love to all of you, and especially the panelists, Sacha, Sathnam, Nisha, and Lynsey. And take care. Lots of love. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
I hope you guys could hear the message. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So my first question is going to go to Lynsey Miller. Lynsey Miller is from the UK. Her films include Lizard Girl, Doing Money, the TV series Doctors, Eve and Casualty, and more recently, the 2020 TV series Dead Water film. She's really gracious to agree to be with us here today, Lynsey. I've always enjoyed chatting with you on email as well. The Boy with the Top Knot was our opening film in 2018 for the festival. And the theme of immigrant experience went very well with the theme of our festival. And that's why we chose it as the opening film. It was also, we thought, very beautifully made, and it really hit home. So my question to you, Lynsey, is what attracted you to this story? How did you, and more importantly too, how did you go about then putting together the cast?
So what attracted me to the story initially, I mean, obviously the book, I had read it previous to it having been adapted, and I just thought it was so beautifully written. It just, how human it was, how much it sort of captured humanity and love and family and what it meant to be part of a community. In terms of why I wanted to direct it, two reasons really. I was really struck by the way the mental health aspect was portrayed. That's something I had experience with in my own childhood, and I could really relate to what Sathnam was describing. And then the other reason was I was really intrigued by the concept that he talks about of existing in two separate worlds, and what it is to come from a working class community and move to a big city and try and sort of make your way in a very privileged industry if you don't have the kind of connections. And obviously for Sathnam that was journalism, for me it was filmmaking, and that idea that when you go back home, what then becomes the common connection? Do you talk about your experiences? You've been traveling, you've been doing X, Y, and Z that your family have never experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And does it look like you're kind of showing off, or do you not talk about it and it looks like you feel like they're not going to understand? So for that, I just felt that I could really relate to that side of things, and that's what really drew me to the material. And then in terms of casting, so we had a kind of two-pronged approach. We had a great casting director in India called Tess Joseph, who cast Deepti and Anupam. And then we had a casting director in the UK who we worked with to find the rest of the cast.
Okay. So had you seen any of their movies in the past before you casted them, or?
Yeah, I'm ashamed to say with Deepti, I actually didn't know her work until Lion, you know, the Australian film. And I just thought she was mesmerising. It was such a short role. You know, she was really only in it, you know, for not long at all, but I was just captivated by her. And then we were really fortunate that she offered to put herself on tape, so we were able to see her, how she wanted to portray the character. And then in terms of Anupam, I actually know him from Sense8, and then when I was watching that and then seeing the different things he'd done, some of the roles, because he's such a, you know, actor of great variety, I didn't put them together as being the same actor.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that was great as well. So we really didn't think we would be lucky enough to get them both, but we sort of went after them hard.
Good for you. That paid off. Deepti's role, as well as Anupam, I mean, you know, well, Deepti's role was so layered in the film, and Anupam's role was so understated. And the question is, how difficult was it to direct them?
They're both very, very different actors. I think with Anupam, like, the approach we took was that he is, first of all, he's a father, he's a husband. You know, we looked at the man, and the mental illness was just a part of his character. And we were very fortunate, actually, for both roles, that we got to meet Sathnam's family, and they were very, very welcoming, as was Sathnam. And so we were able to sort of thread a lot of reality into it where appropriate. In terms of Deepti, like, she's a much more sort of insular actor. I mean, I can't speak highly of either of them, but yeah, it was really exciting for me to watch Deepti work as a director. You know, everything she does is different, and even if it might not be quite right for what you're doing, she's very exciting to watch. Yeah.
Did it surprise you when Anupam just said that, you know, he himself was going through depression at a time when he was acting out this role in the film?
No, because so when we'd originally sent the script out to Anupam, what he likes to do with directors is he gets them on the phone, and then they chat through their sort of ideas for the character, and he wants to see if that's compatible. So when he had called me initially, we talked through that, and he had just recently started to sort of speak to people and seek help for that. So I was aware of it before he accepted the role.
Okay. Yeah. What's the real Anupam like?
He's lovely. What's the real Anupam like? He's very fun. He's just a nice guy. I mean, you know, he's very professional. He works constantly. His work ethic is, you know, second to none.
Yeah.
But I think for us as well, like, he really helped everyone raise their game, because he is so prepared, and he comes in and he works so hard. I think that was really great for the younger actors as well, to sort of bounce off of that.
Oh yeah, and so my next question then is for Sacha. Sacha, first I want to thank you for being here. It's lovely to have you here and hear your version of what went on in the film. To the rest of the audience, Sacha is an award-winning actor of the English screen and stage, with performances in many shows to his credit. Some of them, most recent one, Orlov, 2020. And then I have Doctor Who, is also 2020, a TV series. The Great, Thunderbirds Are Go, Dracula, Go Jetters, Iron Fist. And then he's also lent his voice to many, many video games, which is really fascinating for for those of us who play video games. Sacha was a big fan of Alan Bennett, and I read somewhere that your role in History Boys was really significant in setting you on this path, and that you always seek out. And I think more recently you've done Alleluia, which is an Alan Bennett screen script, right? So, Sacha, my question is, how was it for you working with Anupam? Were you aware of Anupam as his stature as an actor and as well, and how easy was it for you to act with them? Because I think a lot of your interaction in the movie too was with Deepti, I think. And I mean, there were a couple of scenes in there where you're having a discussion with her, with your mother. She acts as your mother in the film.
Well, the thing is, you've got two icons, really, two cinematic icons.
Right.
What's so special when you get to do a project like this is you get to see these two people as a man and a woman, simply human beings. And I had to kind of put their kind of a stature to the side and look at them as my mum and dad. And actually they became like family by the end of it, both Deepti and Anupam. Anupam has done so much work, and actually it was a joy just working opposite him and seeing him do his craft. And at the same time, he'd do a take, and then in between he'd ask me, do you think that was good enough? And there's just something very human about Anupam.
Yeah.
And actually, a year maybe after we finished filming, I was filming in New York, so I got to hang out with him a little more. And I feel like I got to know him even more on a personal level. And I remember sitting in his hotel room in New York and running through his lines for a series he was filming. It was incredibly special, and it was so nice to work on a project like Boy with a Top Knot. It's rare for projects like that to happen, to bring actors like myself, like Anupam, Deepti together. And Lynsey as a director was incredibly nurturing, as well as Sathnam allowing us to tell the story, which only brought us together even more and allowed us to do the best performance.
What was the most difficult scene for you there? So
the most difficult scene was probably with Deepti, and in the story she opens up to Sathnam about her past. And it was really difficult for me because, the stories are different, but at the same time, they're very similar as well. And they become even more potent because they're stories that we don't really talk a lot about. Yeah. And Sathnam had created a space through his story to allow us to do that. And I guess filming that scene, it was so close to home, I found it very uncomfortable. And I remember at the end of the day, I just I went into my trailer and I cried because I couldn't help thinking about my own mother in all of this, and just the immense respect I have for my own mum, especially what Sathnam's mum had gone through, but also the amazing achievement of coming into a foreign country and being an excellent wife and an excellent mother. I just found that I could relate to it so much. And it really hit home in doing that scene and seeing my own mum in Deepti as well. It was very, very moving, and something I just cherish to this day, really. And I don't take it for granted either.
Were you able to share that with your mother then?
Yeah, I mean, to share it in the way that when we had the premiere, I don't think my parents knew a lot about the story or what I'd gone through doing it, but allowing them to see it without me having to say too much said enough. And I think they were incredibly moved by it. That scene was very close to home for me, but I think my mum was more impressed by the fact that I'd attempted to learn Punjabi for that scene at the end. And she still corrected me at the end. I was like, is that all you can say at the end of this whole film? But I know deep down, particularly my mum and dad, you know, at the end of the screening, just watching the credits roll and you turn and to see your mum and dad and see that smile, and they're incredibly proud that I was able to share this story. That's also part of their story as well.
Correct. And I'm sure for them, like you said, it's so much a part of their story too, right? Like most immigrants who go to other countries, whether it's the US or England. Let me switch to Sathnam for a minute there, because Sathnam is the author of the book called Boy with the Top Knot. Just to introduce Sathnam Sanghera very briefly, he is an award-winning author and journalist. He writes for The Times. He's an avid race car enthusiast, I understand. And he also writes a motoring column for Management Today magazine, amongst other things that he does. A very notable journalist indeed. So The Boy with the Top Knot was a memoir. The Sangheras had moved to England in the 60s, and Sathnam was the youngest of 4 children. He was born in England. He studied English at Cambridge, was a super achiever, I understand. And like most first-generation immigrants, some of whom are watching and participating today, you know, your education and your environment sort of puts you at odds with your family in the country, with your family overseas, all of that. So I wanted to reflect, Sathnam, back on what it was like for you growing up. And at what point did you say, I want to write about this? What was that turning point for you?
I think you picked up on something, which is that Anashi Sacha as well, in that my story is a bit of a universal story, in that I think a lot of second generation immigrants go through these issues. They feel torn between 2 worlds and so on. But also there's something very specific about my story, in that my dad and my sister both have schizophrenia, which is quite an unusual thing. And so it's a complicated story from that perspective. It's odd for me now at the age of 43 to be talking about it, because the book incredibly sorted out all my problems. And now I have a completely new set of problems. So it's almost like talking about someone else from the past. And the adaptation is, because it was a memoir, made it quite unusual, because when things are adapted, normally they're novels or they're made up, but these people are still alive. Also, the things that happen in the film are the worst things that ever happened to me. So it's not like I was desperate for it to be adapted. It was actually optioned by someone else. Yeah. And I pulled out because my sister got sick. And when it came back to life, when Nisha Party took over, I still wasn't entirely sure about it. And I was quite scared of reading the script, and I kept my distance, to be honest. The fact that it turned out really well is entirely down to Nisha and Lynsey and Sacha and Anupam and Deepthi. I mean, this almost never happens, but they understood it. And I think they all bought different things. Lynsey, as you might have noticed, is not brown, but I think she got the story in that she's working class and she knows what it's like to join the establishment as a working class person. Sacha is just, you know, the best young actor around, and very good looking, so that was flattering. Deepthi is such a soulful woman, almost reminding me of my mother. And Anupam is just such a legend. And you're asking, what is he like? And he got shortlisted for a BAFTA award for his performance in this. And I went around London with him on the day that he was down for the award. And the main thing I remember about him is that he's incredibly famous. Even in London, it was like I was walking around with the Queen. Crowds of people came to say hello to him, have their picture taken. He's incredibly popular. And apparently there was the same reaction in Birmingham when he was filming there too. So it was a dream experience. And even now, it continues to be very rewarding. I mean, I remember the first time I saw someone British Asian on TV. It was The Buddha of Suburbia. And that film had a massive effect on the way I saw my career going. And it's amazing to get emails from people saying the same thing about The Boy with the Top Knot. I think it's one of those things people will watch and realize it changed British Asian cinema.
Lynsey, do you have any comments to what Sathnam said? Because
Say again?
I said, do you have a comment to what Sathnam said? Your body of work?
I mean, I think in terms of it changing British Asian cinema, I mean, the biggest thing for us, the broadcaster really approached it thinking it was going to be a very niche project, thinking that, you know, it was really only going to be the sort of Punjabi audience that were going to come to it. And I think what was so beautiful for me was to see how many different people related to it. You know, we had people coming and telling us like, oh, I'm gay, and it just reminded me so much of coming to tell my parents, or I'm Jewish and I've fallen in love with a Christian, and I think that's a testament to the humanity, you know, in the original source material, and to Sathnam and his family for their bravery in sharing their story, that it just created such a platform for people to speak, and it just touched so many people, and I'm forever grateful that I got to be a part of it.
Right. And even for you know, the first generation kids growing up here, when they saw that film, they really felt it, you know, it struck a chord in them. So I'm so grateful that you guys did this film. I want to take some questions from the audience. Subroto Basu has a question for us. Amit, would you connect him, please? Amit? Yeah, there's Subroto. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, everybody. Great movie, loved it. I had a couple things I wanted to know to understand the movie better. Do you think the audience, most of the audience, get the significance of the top knot in the Sikh culture and what it means for it to be kind of cut off? And since I'm out of the country for a while and somewhat maybe unfamiliar with the way the culture looks at it now, but I know that when I was there like 40 years ago, it meant a lot. The top knot meant a lot. So do you see that people understanding the significance of that? And number two, the issue of the mental illness, right? Did you have a message on that for people to take as far as relationships go, and how people should look at that, considering future generations?
Who wants to take it? Shall I address the top knot?
I'll answer the top knot one, and then Sacha can do the mental illness one. How about that? I think the top knot thing is, it's a good question, because the Sikh community is a very small community, although we don't realize that. We're a small community in India, we're a small community over here. And I think there were conversations at the BBC about whether people would understand it. And also there were questions about, you know, the sacrilegious nature of it. I mean, having your hair cut is such a big thing, and it could have upset a lot of people. But I think the way the film was made, the way Lynsey made it, it kind of doesn't matter. You can tell, even if you don't know anything about Sikhism, you can work out that it's a massively significant moment. And I think that's what you do with these kind of films, in that they're set in very specific communities, but you make it universal. And I've noticed that there's now a whole, you know, a genre, a very specific genre of community. Like there's a load of Hasidic Jew dramas at the moment on Netflix, which are doing really well, unorthodox, where often you might not be able to tell the significance of certain rituals, but the directors do a good job of kind of making it universal and making you appreciate the emotional significance. Anyway, I'll let Sacha answer the next one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, just talking about mental health is, it seems that we can't just, the issue is very specific to each individual. And I've realized the importance of not kind of speaking on behalf of the South Asian community. Yes, we're South Asian, but our stories are very different, yet similar. But just from my own experience, as an actor, what I'm trying to discover in myself is, yes, I'm British, and yes, I'm Indian, but what is that space in between, which I felt that Sathnam has captured so beautifully with his own story. And we're talking now about how brilliant it is, and commending that this film was made. But what saddens me is that how long are we going to have to wait till the next project comes out? And for me, I struggle with that, because I'm trying to define what that space is in between in terms of being British Indian. And there isn't enough art out there that channels that space and asks those important questions. So it's understandable that people like me and many others in the South Asian community are dealing with mental health issues, because no one is talking about it, not just necessarily about mental health, but talking about our own identity and what it means to exist in that space. And as an actor, there's only so much that I can do, because by the time the script comes to me, the commissioners have already made a decision as to what they want to create that year. However, in saying that, one thing that's really important to me as my profile increases is I do want to be able to champion and support and produce more work from the South Asian community. And that's not necessarily talking about South Asian stories, but it's talking about our identity. I think it's important, and it ties in with mental health. And also, just to add to this, I am slightly saddened that I didn't know that Anupam was suffering from depression during Top Knot. And again, it just shows that particularly men, and South Asian men, we don't talk about these kinds of things. So it's even more of an importance that we do try in some way create a platform where we can talk about it.
Absolutely. In fact, that was my conversation with Anupam today. We have to do something about this. Roto, your response to that question, the question that you just asked, and then we'll go on to Anita's question after that. Subroto? Amit, I think Subroto is talking. Yeah. Maybe not. So, all right, we will go on to Subroto. Do you want to say something to the answer?
I think he needs to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're muted again.
Can't hear you, but.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Okay, so I think that was a very good response. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I know Satnam mentioned the Ascetic Jews. There's a wonderful show called The Unorthodox on TV right now. I suggest we see it, because we learn a lot about different cultures that way. My next question is from Anita Raturi.
Hi, and welcome to all, especially to Satnam and Sacha and Lynsey. I want to start it out with a shout out to Anupam, who is not there right now, but he's from Lucknow, and I was at the university. I was junior to him, but he was well known there for his work in theater as well as at the university. So that was a shout out to him. And I think what kind of got me the most was the way that, Deepthi Nawal, as Satnam's mother, is talking to her friends who had helped her out. And then she lies down and they say, we always wondered whether she had done some jadoo tona or had done some sort of wizardry or witchery on the husband to make him have the illness. And I think that would have been so hurtful for a woman to know that people think about her. And I'm glad you brought it out. And I guess so. And that, I think that really struck me the most, is that she had dealt with this for all her life. And yet the stigma of being the wife of someone is also a big stigma. So I guess my question is, do you think that still exists? I know that, I'm well acquainted with the Indian community, although we've been here a long time, and people will say, oh, they do that because they belong to this community, they still blame people. It's a blame game for something as serious as mental illness. So just wanted your thoughts on the reaction to mental illness back then, and which may be perpetuated even today.
I think for me, that sort of laying the blame, whether it's witchcraft or whatever it is, mental illness scares people. It really scares people, and people sort of feel like they need a reason, they need someone to blame, because then they don't have to take responsibility themselves. And I think it still is prevalent today, as it was then. I think now we're much better at sort of paying lip service to mental illness and the need for people to get the appropriate help, but it is still very surface. And I think, a lot more needs to be done, and the resources aren't available that need to be available. And that's just going to keep that cycle going.
Thank you, Lynsey.
Thank you, Lynsey. Another question coming up from Anu Mitra. Anu, would you like to ask your question? Thank you, Anita, for your question. Anu Mitra? Anu, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to ask you my question. I love the movie, but only in retrospect. I have to be very honest about it, because when I saw the film, I had so many questions that I just couldn't put the pieces together. And just like Satnam had to go back to his family, aka Sacha, to find out more about what was it that he missed, even though he was right in the middle of his life with them. I too had to go to professionals in India just this last weekend, just leading up to this phone call, to find out how is it that someone can live in a family and be right in the middle of everything and yet not know that there was mental illness all around them. How is that possible? And so the professional helped me understand that it was completely plausible to just ignore and, avoid, not acknowledge what was going on, which was fascinating to me because, of course, in my family, we do have mental illness, but it was very much out there. So we were dealing with it when I was growing up. So thank you, all of you, for bringing this to my awareness that, it's such an insidious, hidden disease, and we all need to become much more aware and talk about it in conversation. But I was interested in finding out, what were the plausible connections that you drew between the life of this mental illness that Satnam faced to the cinematic medium, so that it became believable to someone such as myself. Like, I am completely educated and I'm a professional and all of that. But how is it possible that I could not understand what was going on? Because the dots had not been connected for me. So I'll mute my microphone right now.
Yeah, Amit, would you open up all the cast and all three microphones, Lynsey, Sacha, and Satnam, please?
Yeah, I think you've touched upon, I'll let Lynsey answer and Sacha answer the cinematic side of that question, but you've touched upon something very profound, is that why don't families understand what's going on? And it happens actually with child abuse all the time. There's often very serious child abuse in families, and even the victims don't recognize it. You should read Malcolm Gladwell's new book. You know, often you get victims of serious child abuse defending the perpetrators late into their lives until they have therapy. But in relation to my own life, I always think there's a Nietzsche quote which goes along the lines of, ignorance is structured as knowledge. On some level, we choose psychologically not to know. And I think I was so desperate to make something of myself and also to rescue my mother that I just did everything I could to make it and to leave and to have a different life. And it was only when I got to my 30s, I had a crisis and I had to go back and try to discover and put the pieces together. And it's interesting that I knew that you've had that experience too. But anyway, I'll let Lynsey explain the film side of it.
I mean, I think for me, when I read it, I mean, there's a bit at the end that we say, you know, Satnam always felt like he got to where he got to in his life in spite of his family, and sort of hearing his parents' story makes him realize that he got there because of his family. And I think that's a testament, particularly to his mother, who's, you know, a really, really incredible lady. And in terms of him not understanding, I think I always approached it that he did understand, and it was so painful that he'd chosen to bury it so he could continue on. And I think there's a couple of scenes in the film, you know, like when young Satnam watches his sister Puli coming down the stairs and then cycles off. And I guess that's a very visual representation of what he was doing in his mind, of running away from the problem because it was too overwhelming. He didn't know how to fix it. So like Satnam said, you know, about the child abuse, we can trick our minds very easily into sort of doing what we need it to do to survive. And that's how I always saw Satnam's journey.
Anu?
Yes, and I think it was made very much more powerful, the situation of Satnam in the movie not understanding, by the fact that he was a top-notch student and he was at Cambridge, where he got first, and we heard that a few times, and that was very powerful, because someone as educated and as aware as him, not being able to understand the intricacies of this disease, which, as Anupam Kher said, is much more powerful than any physical illness that one could have, because it's so invisible. So, Sacha, I was wondering if you had anything to say, and thank you so much, all of you.
No, thank you. Just thinking about this and touching on what Satnam was saying is, when we talk about childhood trauma and this idea of did he know or not know, it's a very hard question to answer, and it sometimes can't be one or the other. It can be a mixture of both, and I think there's a problem that lies in there where we try and define it. And I think what's important, I mean, from my own personal experience with childhood trauma, is regardless of what happened or whether you know or you don't know, what happens is that it manifests itself in a certain way. Is that when you hit a certain age, you notice changes in your behavior or your relationships and friendships are severely affected. I think what's important right now with Boy with the Top Knot is that we have this conversation, because from my own experience, when things feel like we have to try and define something or define a feeling, or there has to be an answer, for me, it makes me kind of run a million miles away and not really confront myself. I think what is more important right now is working out the steps in how a person can confront childhood trauma and strive to nurture that in order to help them put themselves in the okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, because I think especially in this pandemic, mental illness is going to rise. I mean, the numbers and the incidences. So this whole thing of not knowing is such an important thing to keep in mind. So thank you all of you. And I just want to add something about the top knot. This morning in the New York Times, in the very first section, was a huge profile of the first Sikh graduate of the US military academy, and how she has not cut her hair according to tradition, and her hair is knee length. So the military really had to work with their rules to make this possible. But what a proud moment for the Sikh community and for Indians and for humanity everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that, Anu, indeed. A quick question to Satnam. Did somebody help you through this, Satnam, sorting these issues, or did you seek professional help or maybe family help to sort through this, or were you pretty much on your own sorting out stuff for yourself?
Actually, the book was my therapy, in that it was an editor who had the idea for the book. I mean, if you come from a background where you don't know any writers, I never had an ambition to write a book. And basically it was Mary Mount at Penguin who took me out for lunch and said, this is quite a good story. And so she got me started. And so the journey in the book is what happens. During the course of it, I did meet a couple of therapists, and I found it very difficult to find therapists who had experience of our particular issues and our particular community. And I've noticed that one of the great things that have happened in the last 10 years is that there are now loads of therapists who specialize in these issues. And actually, there's a great organization called Pink Laddu, which is run by a friend of mine, which gives you a list of therapists around the world who will help you with these kind of issues. But ultimately, I mean, I've had therapy since, and I don't think you necessarily need someone of the same background. What you're talking about are universal problems. You're talking about guilt, love, blackmail, emotional blackmail. These are universal problems, and I think your average psychiatrist or therapist can help you out.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to take another question from Pulin Kinkabala.
Yeah, hello.
There?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a wonderful film. Especially, my family had a discussion on the metaphor of boy with the top knot, very effectively used in the film. We finally concluded that boy is a young Satnam that never grew up or avoided understanding family since childhood. Question I have is, when he asked father a question about, tell me about, start from when you came to this country, and he talks about, only thing he talks about is he remember riding bicycle while his mother dispute and say he never had bicycle. Does he make a connection that dad is really transposing his riding bicycle as if dad was riding through him? Or what was going through his mind that time when he hears that? Typically, dementia takes away the short-term memory, but long-term memory remains. I don't know about schizophrenia. Of course, that's a lot more complex. But curious about hearing from Satnam and Lynsey and Sacha also, what was going through that boy's mind when he hears father is saying something that is not true?
I'm going to let Lynsey answer this, but the whole scene began because my father did actually say that conversation happened in that about the bike, but then I think Lynsey improvised.
Nice.
I mean, I think for me that was that scene was just a real opportunity to show the strength and the length of the relationship between Satnam's parents, and just to have a moment of bickering between parents that we're all, we can all understand and relate to. In terms of what Satnam's feeling, I think he doesn't want his mum to shut his dad down because he wants to know the story, and he doesn't know how to get in, because he just kept getting shut down every time he sort of broached it. And so I guess that was sort of his in, to then let his mum start telling her version of it. If she was going to shut Dad's version down, then you have to tell me your version.
Well,
thank you. So is our interpretation correct that the metaphor, the young boy with the top knot, is really a young Satnam, which he left the family and never grew up until at the end you bring him back to the family and the boy disappears?
I think for me, he was always a sort of like symbol of Satnam's guilt and, you know, Satnam's feelings with his family, and he was always sort of haunted in a way by this younger version of himself, that he wondered if he could have and should have done things differently. And then as it kind of progresses, the boy almost becomes his conscience and his guide, and it's when he's able to sort of really connect with the family and work through what's happened that he doesn't need the boy anymore.
Thank you. Satnam, you had something, and you mentioned that you actually had the conversation with Dad exactly like that. What was going through your mind that time?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with schizophrenia, in that the conversations you have, they are sometimes nonsensical, but there's also some of it's real, and you can't actually tell what's real and what's not. And sometimes you think the person is making something up or is imagining it, and it actually happened. So my father's memories are rather like that. But I think you're right in making the link to dementia, in that I think a lot of people with Alzheimer's and dementia also have a similar way of speaking. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from Om Srivastava.
Hi guys, bravo, I love the film. Actually, Lynsey really touched on the question I did have, which was about the boy in the top knot. Kind of how you guys used him as a device throughout the film. And I guess kind of foolishly on my part, when I first saw the boy the first couple times, I was thinking, uh-oh, now maybe is he getting schizophrenia now? Is he imagining this? But I think that was just only my foolhardiness. But I do have a question relating to the boy for Satnam. Kind of what was that like, you know, when you see that character on the screen? Like, what do you feel emotionally when you kind of think about that time? I imagine it's, you know, I think about myself in your shoes, it would feel pretty weird. And then also, you know, for Lynsey, kind of what was the creative process when you guys arrived at implementing that in the film? Did that happen early on? Was that kind of something that arrived later? It was just a very interesting, unique trait that stuck out in the film. So I was curious about the genesis of that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was really weird. You're right. It was weird in so many different ways. It was weird when they have the read through and you walk into a room and there's all these actors who play every member of your family, you know, acting out the worst things that have ever happened to you. That was weird. I had to walk out of that. I couldn't watch the film all the way through. I don't think I watched it all the way through until the screening. I always have to stop and restart. And you know what? I didn't watch it when it came out. I had my back to it, and my family were watching it, and my friends were watching it. I was watching them watch it, which is pretty weird. I think I only properly watched it about 3 months afterwards, when I watched it by myself. And even then, there's some certain bits where I have to put my hands in front of my eyes. I haven't watched it for about 3 years, so it's weird. It's definitely weird, but I think they did a brilliant job. And part of the reason I find it so painful to watch is because it feels really true. And even the things they changed felt emotionally very, very true. So it was intense. I should let Sacha maybe answer how he felt watching himself. I guess he's used to it as an actor.
Oh, watching myself. Thanks, Satnam. I'm not sure if this relates to your question, but I initially was quite skeptical. Sorry, I'm not sure about taking the project on because the project was so close to home, and I'm so used to playing characters that are very different from me. And this was very, very close to home. But one thing that it did do by being part of it is it got me to kind of confront myself, ask questions about my own identity, and also more importantly, reconnect with my own family, which I'm doing at the moment. And I urge everyone to do this. If we're to remove some of the stigmas surrounding mental health, I think it's very important that our generation asks our parents those questions, and as a starting point is understanding their history. And I feel like once we understand their history, we're able to implement changes going forward.
Yeah.
And just to pick up on the sort of last part of the question, so the idea of the young Satnam sort of interacting with the older Satnam came from Mick Ford, who wrote the screenplay. And then when I became attached as a director, to be honest, in the beginning, I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to realize it. I definitely had my reservations about it. And it wasn't until we found Himmet, the young actor who played the young Satnam, that the idea of him being this sort of like guide in a bit of the Jiminy Cricket sort of came to life, because he has these wonderful eyes. He's very, very empathetic, and he just has these sort of all-knowing, very wise eyes. And so that's, we sort of built from that. So it was really finding Himmet that was a sort of key for me to make that role work.
Great, thanks. Sacha, I wanted to kind of touch back on what you just said. I'm glad you did take the role on. I think with such personal and delicate matter and themes being dealt with, it was really rewarded by having somebody for whom it hit close to home for. And I think everything that you said, it's really thought-provoking. When I was watching the film, there were things. There's so much as a child of immigrants, I don't know about my parents' history, hardly anything actually of their time in India. And I know that there's a lot of trauma going on early on in their life that is terrifying for me to kind of ask about. But it is inspiring seeing the film and watching those conversations and hear you talk about it to kind of value the importance of finding out, what was there, what happened, and trying to understand. While we still can't ask those questions. So
yeah, just to quickly add to that, because I 100% agree with you, and this is why I'm so grateful that Satnam told his story, because I'm not sure about you, but when people ask me, oh, what's your story, I tend to use my parents as if it was my own. I'll always start with, my parents came over, and then people will say, no, what's your story? And it's something I'm still trying to find as well, which is why it is important to ask those questions, ask our parents questions, understand their history, in order for us to establish our own history, if that makes sense. I just hope there's more of it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is so profound for all of us South Asians, and Owen really touched upon something. So go back and have that conversation with your parents, and and talk and find out. I mean, we don't bite, right? We'll share our stories with our kids. So, but it's
so you've got no excuse. It's lockdown. There's loads of time. Just talk to your parents.
My kids have been asking me some questions, and some I avoid, of course, being the real Indian parent that I am, and others I'm learning to open up much more. I believe. I think some of my kids are on, they might agree or disagree, but do go and have those crucial conversations with your folks. So important. Hi, Menaka. There's my kid. Are you done with your question? Should we move on to the
Yeah,
next?
I'm done. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is from, trying to look here. I believe it's Kalpa Shah. Kalpa, you have one question to ask. Which one will it be? Kalpa? Go ahead.
Okay, hi. Congratulations, Lynsey, Sathnam, Sacha, Anupam, Dipti, Puli, everyone. I had all these questions. I have to admit, the first time I watched it, maybe, I don't know, maybe the mood wasn't right or whatever, but when Lena told me about this film, I watched it yesterday. And I was just wondering, should this movie have been a longer film to cover other aspects? So that's a question for Lynsey. For Sathnam, I think I've written it down in my chat, but for Sathnam, you know, I read in one article, you mentioned that it's a very un-Punjabi thing to talk about your emotions and feelings. I wonder if that also comes, you know, post-partition. I don't know whether your parents, I think your parents may be post-partition children, but, you know, we are who we are often because of our parents. And Sacha, you just mentioned that, you know, I'm still trying to grapple with my own, you know, who I am question. So all these are interrelated. Want to throw some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to answer that one about Punjabis. Indians in general like to put their best foot forward. And I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but there aren't really any Indian family memoirs. I mean, I couldn't find any at the time I was writing my memoir. Memoir is very much a Western form. And why is that? And I think a lot of immigrant families went through a lot of painful things, but also there's a culture, especially Punjabi culture, is about celebrating success. You have a Mercedes, you have a private number plate, you wear your designer suit, you have an extravagant wedding, you celebrate things. You don't advertise all the things that went wrong. And so what I did, I think it's a symptom of the fact that I am as British as I am Indian. But I think it'd be very hard for someone who's Indian in that culture to write this sort of book because it goes against, I think it goes against the culture.
May I just add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, Sathnam, I'm almost tempted. I might be speaking out of turn. I'm attempting to be an author. I just submitted my manuscript of just a portion of an entire book, which is going to be a memoir of a Bollywood lyricist. And he was a victim of partition. And I might actually use your quote from The Guardian, which I read. I almost added it to the manuscript to say I'm probably going to. But what you just touched upon, that people like to talk about successes. We don't talk about, you know, we only celebrate. We don't talk about our failures. Oddly, and again, I might be speaking out of turn. I'm still waiting for the publisher to even accept my manuscript as part of a book which is being written by the subject's son. I have actually touched upon the failures of someone who was super successful over time.
That's good. I think there are increasing number of memoirs that have been written. I think you had a second part of the question, which was for Sacha or Lynsey. I can't remember what the question was.
I'll have to go back into my chat. And okay, the other thing I wanted to say was, yes, for Sacha. Sacha, how did you feel about particularly two scenes that you, one was when you were talking to Puli about, you know, that was a very poignant scene as far, like when I was watching it, I had tears. I still get emotional about it. And the other thing is when your mother's in the car. Go ahead.
Well, it's an honor that we're all here talking about it, and it just shows when people emote to it, are connecting with it, and it's a shared story, and that's a real honor, and it just shows the impact that art can have, particularly on our community. And again, let's be honest, like art in our community is sometimes seen as a bit of a waste of time, but it isn't. It just stresses just how important it is, and even more how important it is during lockdown, when stress and mental health is intensified. But anyway, with regards to your question, the scene with Bully was a very difficult scene to do, and I think on the day I think I found it very hard, because I think I put too much pressure on myself to try and deliver a certain kind of performance. But I think it was a real lesson for me as an actor, which is to just listen and go with it and be as present as possible. And sometimes what you think as an actor is going to be a truthful reaction, actually what a truthful a reaction is just submitting and listening. But it is a very moving scene in the story, especially for Satnam, because in that moment it's almost like what he knew is completely flipped upside down. So yeah, so the other scene you mentioned was with my mum, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're muted.
It's the drive to the hospital, I think.
Oh,
okay.
Is that right?
Yes, the Dipti and you in the car, and then later when she feigns migraine, and you're talking to the Siddharthi and his wife. So all those.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's again a really difficult scene to play. Yes, it was about Satnam's mum, but in that moment I can't help think about my own mother in that time, who was married into it was a love marriage, but she had to move into a completely different family, a family that was very different to hers, and didn't really have anybody to talk to. And I think I was really saddened by a woman having to hold on to so much pain, and not having anybody to talk about it to. And I think what was very difficult for me as that character was hearing it through someone else's mouth other than my own mother's. I think that was very difficult to play. But again, underneath it all, I was very happy and proud that we were putting this story on the forefront, and also and stressing just how difficult it is for women like my mother.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalpa, for that question. And I know that Satnam has to leave and I know I have 3 more questions if you'll bear with me. But Satnam, I'm going to take a question from Vishy Manik, and then please let us know if you can stay on for the next question or if you have to leave.
Oh yeah, I can do 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Satnam. Thank you.
Vishy Manik.
Sacha.
Vishy Manik. Amit, is Vishy there? We can move on to the next person if she isn't available.
Yes, please do.
Leena Gandhi.
So, of course, this was a terrific film, but there's something else I take away from this movie is the role of the woman. And in the Indian culture, in the arranged marriage culture, when at least in those days when our mothers were getting married off, they had no idea who they were marrying. And I cannot imagine the dreams that are shattered. And yet these women do not walk away. What does that say about women? So Satnam, I don't know if you ever, I'm sure you did, you've had an opportunity to talk to your mom and as to where did you find the strength to get through it all?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question in that, you know, my mother is, Lindsay's been very kind about her. And to be honest, everyone loves my mum because she's almost like a Nelson Mandela figure and she's heroic. And, but I think she's typical of a whole generation of Asian women who emigrated, you know, and who have sustained families and in a land with no family of their own and no friends. It's an incredible achievement. And this story is not told enough. But it's also the story I tell all the time. I mean, I probably put my mum in my articles every other week. And my second book is about two sisters, and one of them is based on my mother. And she's the real inspiration of my life. But I do think that generation of women, some of whom went on to set up amazing businesses or become film directors and done incredible things, they're not celebrated enough. And it's partly because they don't celebrate themselves enough. There's something self-effacing in the culture where they're always serving someone else. But the thing I'm proudest of is that I've written something and Lindsay's made something that celebrates what my mother has done.
For sure, for sure. I to me, that was a bigger message than the mental illness part of it, because you know that existed, and you know she took care of it and raised a family. My God, who does that? Not very many women could achieve that. That is simply amazing. So that's what I got out of the movie more than anything else.
But we also live through our parents as well. I wouldn't be doing what I was doing as an actor if it wasn't for my mum. She encouraged me to do what I'm doing and full-heartedly believed in it as well. And there was many a times when I was so broke and unemployed, and she never once kind of gave up on me and said, "Oh, be a doctor or an accountant, you know, or go to dad's." Believe in me.
That's usually what we say, right? Thank you for your question. There's some noise in the background, Amit. Thank you for that question. I'll take a question from Ratee Apana, if you're there.
Hey guys.
Hi, Ratee is my daughter, and she lives in California. She's a producer in Hollywood.
Less of a question. Lindsay, great job. It's great to see another female director out there doing some amazing work, specifically focused in the first generation space. Anyone who's on this call has heard me speak before. I think first generation, both in England and in America, is an identity unto itself, and I'm hyper focused on making sure that, like, as an identity, those stories are told, which Sathnam, you talked about a little bit. So thank you guys for your work. It was beautiful work. It also specifically in the mental health space. I think these type of impact films are incredibly important. And Sacha, I hope I'm saying your name right, a big fan of your other work as well. So it's nice to meet all of you. I can't wait to see what you do next. Can't wait to read your next book, Sathnam. And yeah, I think that a lot of times between Indian and American, Chinese and American, Greek and American, and the same thing with UK, we get lost in this identity of you have to be one or the other. And we haven't explored this space in between, which is in existence where, you know, we now live in a world where we talk about mental health issues, we talk about biracial issues, we talk about struggles that we had, and it's incredibly important to have that dialogue. So for both the old generation and the new. So thank you guys for identifying it as an identity and exploring stories within that space.
Yep, and hopefully you guys can also connect up, working in the same space.
Happy to, guys.
Yep, thank you, Ratee. Do you have a question or for any one of them, or do they have a question for you?
I don't think they know who I am, so that would be.
So this interview.
I I run a company out in Los Angeles called Curiosity Entertainment. I spent the last 2.5 years supporting Bronze Studios, did about 30 films with them. So my last film was Capone with Tom Hardy that just came out. My next is a movie with Frida in it, actually, called Needle, that has Frida, Orlando Bloom, Leslie Odom Jr., and Cynthia Erivo. So I do produce film and TV, but again, hyper-focused on impact stories, hyper-focused on stories that allow me to package commercial product with our commercial film and TV with international cast. So trying to find, superhero stories that have the rest of the world in them too.
Thank you, Adrisha. Good to see you, dear. Thank you. Is Vishy Manik there? And Amit, do we have any more questions? Can I wrap up if she's not there? I don't hear anyone. So guys, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you, all three of you, for coming on. This film, as you can see, has really impacted a lot of us in many ways. We truly, I truly was so impressed with this film, which is why I said I need to make this our opening film. It has a message for all of our youth. It has a message for all of the parents who came there. And it has a message for the Americans who were there, because they understand us better as well. And that's how we ended up choosing. I chose this film as our opening film in 2018. I just want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to you, got to know more about how you guys were thinking and what went on. I'm sorry that Anupam, it was very sweet of him had sent us a very long, and takeaway too, that we need to be there for each other and work together in this space. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you, Ratee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It means a lot that there's people in America who understand the story about a boy from Wolverhampton, a place you've probably never heard of.
Never heard of.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And we're looking forward to more books from you, Sathnam and Lynsey. Maybe a TV series or something. I just yesterday I was listening to Gurbinder, her PBS show is on today, and we're hoping to see more of it in the South Asian space. And Sacha, you too as well. Hope to see your films in the future. Thank you, audience, for being with us today. I know we lost a few after 12:30, but thank you so much for staying with us. And hopefully our paths cross again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Ratee.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed Vishy Manik. Did she leave, or she was there, but she had her
mute on?
Yeah, something was going on, but I seem to have missed her in the sequence. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep track of the sequence, but thank you, Amit. You did a great job. Adrisha, thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
You're muted.
Kalpa Shah, very nice question.
Thank you. Thank you for having us over here. Thank you. Really appreciate
it. Really, it was really nice. I'm sorry we didn't have Anupam, but
yes, but it was understandable, right? Yeah.
Really understandable, and it was so sweet of him to, even
send a message.
Really long.